What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. And yes, we're coming at you live on a Tuesday. It is a brand new time. It's the same channel that you know and hopefully love. We're back once again, and we've got a great guest to break down the first UFC card of the year. We're back in full swing. We took a month off from the world of mixed martial arts. There was a Ryzen show here, an Octagon show there, but the known quantity, the UFC, the one that we all wait for each and every Saturday night, it's back in our lives this week. We've got a great main event. Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Ribas. They'll do it again. Last time, Mackenzie Dern coming off a pregnancy. This time, they both had a little bit more time to prepare, but somebody's got to take a step forward in the strawweight division, and somebody's got to find out that maybe, this sport really isn't for them, right? So I think it's a great main event, but without further ado, guys, the way we always do it on Bets and Banter, we're going to start on the bottom, work our way on up with a great guest. JustWinBaby back in the house. How are you, my man? Rich, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, bro. Yeah, good to be back. We've had some Risen. We've had some KSW in the meantime, but nothing quite hits like the UFC. So it's good to be back, and it's good to say that it's fucking fight week, man.
Absolutely. A fight week once again after a long time off. And Rich, we've got no shortage of fights, right? Sometimes we come to events, there's 12 fights, there's 10 fights, 11 fights. You really never know what you're going to get with a UFC card, but they were able to get the late replacements and everything that they needed here, right? We had Nurullo Aliev. He was supposed to take on Yano Ashmus. That was going to be the first fight of the night. Now we've got Joe Solecki, Jiu-Jitsu, stepping up on short notice. And if you remember, Rich, it wasn't a bad showing by Joe Solecki against Drakkar Klose. He actually got into a pretty good armbar position. Then he got picked up, slammed sideways, and that was the only lasting memory that people will have from that fight. But you look at Nurullo Aliev on the other side, he's been out for a while, right? He's got a 9-0 record, very shiny. But then you start to look into it a little bit. He's been out of the cage for a long time, dealt with some injuries. And his last fight, I mean, he's just out there biting Rafael Alves in the first round. That was one of the weirdest exchanges I've seen. And I don't think they were able to find the video proof of him biting him. But Mark Smith is like verbally like reaffirming over and over. He's like, no, there are bite marks on his hands. So I think that it was a weird fight. The fact that he won it with the point deduction shows he had a dominant performance. You know, he was able to get to his takedowns, get to his top position. I expect more of the same here. I think he's going to try and go out there and wrestle with Joe Solecki. But 2 or 3 times in that fight, he had to fight off pretty solid guillotine attempts. If I had to make a parallel to a UFC fighter, a lot of people know, Nurullo Aliev is kind of like Movsar Evloev, right? Another guy, who goes out there, looks to fight for the decision, looks to win minutes, but puts himself in some danger and has to fight out of it, kind of gets cute with his positions at times. So I think that this is an interesting fight, but Joe Solecki on short notice, seeing what happened to him last time where he had a great position, but didn't know the small details he needed to finish that. He's very good at jiu-jitsu, right? I'm not trying to critique him, but in the moment, doesn't scoop the leg, no anchor to the ground, just gets picked up sideways by a guy and slammed. This isn't a jiu-jitsu tournament, right? It's a fight. So ultimately, I don't know how committed Joe Solecki is to fighting. He's doing grappling matches again on the side. I think Nurullo Aliev's a little bit more serious, but it's not a guy that I want to trust with chalk. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, what a fight to start, man. And in good fucking tradition, I'm going to say that Aliev's a bum. I didn't like him in the first matchup against Ashmus, to be fair. I was going to pick him purely because Ashmus is like bottom of the barrel and he's a complete bum himself. But now I've got Joe Solecki. And yeah, it's short notice, but I've checked him out on Instagram. Like you said, he's been doing grappling tournaments. So maybe he's been working off that turkey over Christmas and he isn't completely coming in off the couch. I like him, man. I think, you just said, Solecki, this isn't jiu-jitsu, but it's also not wrestling either. It's MMA. And I think Aliev is very limited in his skill set. I think he lacks striking completely. I think he's all about the double leg. He's all about the takedown. He wants to Khabib you, work you, do the daggy handcuff thing and start punching you until you quit. And that's how I expected the Ashmus fight to go. I thought it was going to be a decision unless Ashmus gives it up to the pressure and to the constant takedowns and ground and pound. But Joe Solecki's a different animal, man. Yeah, he's got his problems, but he's got decent jiu-jitsu. We know Aliev is going to try and take him down. You mentioned it yourself. He's almost been caught in guillotines a couple of times. And yeah, I know that Solecki's going to have every chance to snatch something up, a guillotine, armbar from bottom, reverse position, whatever it might be. And I also don't like Aliev's entries. You watched the fight on Dana White Contender Series against that guy who was out of shape and a complete amateur. He struggled to take him down for a minute until he finally did. The takedowns came easy against Alves, but big whoop. Alves is nothing special when it comes to negating wrestling.
A karate combat fighter now, so...
There you go. So I think styles make fights, and he had some easy styles, but I think he's a complete... fake. I don't think he's built like he's other Tajikistans, Dagestanis, wherever the fuck he's from. So yeah, I'm going to take a shot on Joe. Joe does notoriously gas in fights, even if he's had a full camp. Round 3, he isn't looking good unless he can backpack somebody. So I might just hit the prop, just take the submission. And another thing to note as well, Aliev, it wasn't just the fight with Alves where he had some controversy. Even that fight on Dana White Contender Series, I think the kid's name was Wick. There was some shenanigans there. He got eye poked. He made a massive meal about it. I could see the same in this fight, some weird shit going on. But yeah, I like Solecki at the number. I was surprised to see plus 300. But I think a prop is best. Obviously the submission. So I might do submission round 1 and 2, just for the fuck of it, to have some action on the fight, man. But I won't be betting Aliev. Like you said, 2 years off, and he's just not that great. He's not worthy of the price tag, man.
I was reading an article as well from John Kelly over at Fight Numbers. Great resource in the community. I hope you guys check out his article. Put out a free article with a ton of great information. And I do think he noted in there he was dealing with a knee injury, right? Kind of like kept under wraps exactly what that injury was. But there's a reason he hasn't been active and competing. I did think, the Alves fight, Alves is a solid enough guy, but to your point, styles make fights. And in this kind of matchup, I'm stunned to see the price. Like, I'll just admit, I knew that Solecki was going to be an underdog here. I thought it would be a dog or pass situation, but it's 4-1 just popped in stateside, right? I think DraftKings now has 4-1 on the Joe Solecki side. So a clear dog or pass for me at those numbers. I don't see Aliev having the skills to pay off those kind of prices. I don't think he has a single professional win by submission. So I don't know that his ground game is very well versed, except for, like you said, wrestling, getting on top position. He could, find himself in some ugly situations here, and at the big price tag, I don't think that that's the kind of fighter that I want to back. Speaking of big price tags, though, Rich, we got the second fight of the night with another big favorite here, Fatima Kline. Last time out, I picked her to lose her UFC debut. She was supposed to be on Contender Series. She ends up getting moved up to the main roster expedited fashion because they needed somebody for Jacudavicius, and we've seen Jacudavicius, probably the best Canadian fighter right now in the UFC, like goes out there, wins fights in the women's side of the game, ranked in the top 15 now. So I don't think that's a bad loss for Fatima Kline. Comes in, against a big physical flyweight and just got out-muscled, out-hustled, a little bit out-positioned. I think that in this fight, much more winnable fight, price prohibitive, but I'm certainly not looking at Dudakova as a huge prospect. I think she's gotten a little bit fortunate with her UFC runouts. And even in some of those other fights, Jinyu Frey, that's a girl you should be putting away if you want to be a serious contender. We've seen Polyana Viana one-punch knock her out in the first round. So I don't really like what I've seen from Dudakova to this point, Rich. How about you?
Yeah, me neither. The price tag is wide, but this is how it goes with women's MMA. But yeah, I think Kline should most definitely be the favorite. She's got a way better skill set. Dudakova, she's not good positionally. She's not really much good at anything, to be honest. I don't like what I've seen from the fights. You touched on it as well. Not finishing Fry. That was a bit of a letdown. I think I bet Dudakova by submission in that fight. I like Kline. I think any way she wants, man. Probably round 1 as well. As soon as she gets mount, it's going to be ground and pound until she gives up the neck. Something like that. Or, her arms flailing about like a fucking... or whatever, and she snatches it up. So yeah, Kline probably round 1, and I think she just dominates and finishes her, man. Complete mismatch, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the last couple of notes I'll give on this one, we've got Victoria Dudakova, and I just want to pull up who she's fought in the UFC. She fought Maria Silva on Contender Series, Estela Nunes in the UFC, Jinyu Frey in the UFC, and Sam Hughes in the UFC. Her takedown defense rate, 50%. Against not very high quality competition. And against Fatima Kline, I don't think that that's going to work for you, right? We know Fatima Kline trains with Erin Blanchfield, one of her top training partners for a long time. They've got a lot of work in together, and it just seems to me like she's on a different trajectory right now. And I think especially point to prove, right? It's one thing, somebody goes out there and takes a loss. You wonder how it's going to affect their confidence. She was looking for a foot in the door. We talk about that all the time. Try and get into the UFC as quick as you can. Look for your opportunity. Now she's getting a much more manageable opportunity in her sophomore outing. I think we're going to see a much more polished version of Fatima Kline for this fight. Next up, Rich. Oh my goodness. I'm going to kick this one to you first because I already teased on Twitter that I had plenty to say about this fight, but these are two guys that I thought it was worth betting Brenson Ribeiro over them. So that's as much as I need to say before the preamble. 205. We've got two guys that are looking to make an impact. What do you think about this matchup, Rich?
Yeah, I'm surprised you got a lot to say, man, because I think I haven't got much to say, to be honest. I like Lopes. I'm surprised at the price. It was plus 150 while we were on the break, and I think it shot up to like plus 200 now. So yeah, based on that alone, I think he's the side. I don't think the ceiling's high for either guy, but I think Gadzhiyasulov is the more fugazi out of the two. He's got wins on his record where they're ineligible. Maybe it wasn't a sanctioned fight. I don't even know the details of that, but his opposition's been shit since he's got to Dana White Contender Series. Since he's been in the UFC, I don't think he's fought great competition. I don't like his style of fighting. He's happy to lay on people and win decisions. The UFC don't like that either. Out of the two of them, Lopes, he's the more dangerous of the two. He has decent jiu-jitsu from what I've seen. And yeah, like I say, based on the price, I have to take him. There is a chance that he gets knocked out. He has been knocked out before. But I think his process, I think his ability to wrestle, I think he's got more tools in the arsenal. And yeah, Gadzhiyasulov, I just don't think he's much of anything. I don't think his process in there is good either. I don't even think he knows what he's going to do. He's got some calf kicks. It'll take you down if you make it easy for him, which I don't think Lopes will. He's had experience on LFA. That will bode well for him as well. So yeah, I'm surprised he's such a big underdog, man. And I'm curious to see what you've got to say about Gadzhiyasulov, or even if you pick him for this one.
I think Gadzi is a massive fraud waiting to be exposed. Now, on the other side, I had said that Bruno Lopes was a hype job on Contender Series. I was like, listen, is he terrible? No, but everybody was acting like he was the second coming. He was like minus 700. And I was like, Brenson Ribeiro, he's a killer be killed guy. He's going to go out there and try and kill you, And I was like, this guy, Bruno Lopes, I've seen him get into wild exchanges. I've seen him take some chances on the feet. I felt like that was his biggest vulnerability. And so I was happy with that call, right? Rich, my best call of the year didn't hit last year, okay? I picked Brenson Ribeiro by submission round 2 via guillotine choke. That is everything that happened in the contest, okay? He went out. He wins the first round. On every judge's scorecard, he is up. Unanimous 10-9 round. He comes back out for round 2. He locks up the guillotine I predicted. And then he just gets to the full mount. And for whatever reason, the guy starts bucking and moving, and he tries to guard pull a mounted guillotine and ends up on his back, loses the next 2 rounds. I couldn't believe what I was watching. But in any case, I say to myself, okay, this is Vitor Petrino all over again. Okay, because I said Vitor Petrino, Anthony Smith. I was like, listen, like Vitor Petrino sucks. We can go back and watch his tape and say, like, I picked his first career win by submission. He's still terrible, right? He's out there just like lunging onto people. He's a big Ophi athlete, and the skills weren't there. He was just hyper athleting people. And then I look and I'm like, Anthony Smith is old. He's washed. He's shit. He's not going to do anything. So I didn't bet it. And then the fade equity is like half gone, right? It's just like you look at these kind of guys, and I look at Magomed Gadzhiyasulov as a accident waiting to happen. Let's go back and revisit that Ribeiro fight for just 1 second. Ribeiro lands, I think, 4 calf kicks, and the dude was ready to quit and go home, period. And then, unfortunately, Brenson Ribeiro is the only one who didn't know that. So he's like, let me go for a takedown again. Like, the guy is like cringing and like looking up at his corner like, guys, what do I do? My calf hurts. And then this guy is just like trying to take him. I couldn't believe it, Rich. We then look back. Okay, he looks terrible in the grappling. He looks terrible on the feet. He goes against Jose Medina, who at the time, right, we did these videos and whatever. It's one of my most popular YouTube videos ever because it trended in Bolivia, where they were all roasting me like, hey, look at it. Look how tough our guy was. Look, he stood in the fire. And I was like, fair enough, right? Gadzhiyasulov against guys that are not even fighting real professional fighters was out there struggling and relying on takedowns. So now he's going to have to go take down Bruno Lopes, who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who actually knows how to wrestle. So for me, the way I see this fight is Bruno Lopes is a walking knockout waiting to happen. He could get knocked out by anybody, but I don't think Gadzhi's that scary. I don't think Gadzhi's that dangerous. And I think Gadzhi's got a lot of quit in him. So I think if Bruno Lopes shows up with a little heart and fire and competitive piss and vinegar, he's going to beat this guy. So as far as I'm concerned, man, it's a dog or pass situation. Gadzhi is a fade waiting to happen. And that's the way that I see it. So I don't know if I'm going to get involved. I would like 2-1 or better. I do think Bruno Lopes is a joke in some ways as well. You know, the fact he lost that Brenson Iberio fight, you could forgive, but then you go back and watch, they kind of set him up for success on his Contender Series fight last time out. I thought it was a much more winnable fight for him. It didn't tell me like, oh, wow, he's made such significant improvements. But I just look at him and say, is he really worse than Gadzhiyasulov? I don't see it. They're about the same size. They're kind of similar guys, right? Both have big flaws. And yet it's being priced like one guy sucks and the other guy's really good. And I think they both suck. So for me, give me the big plus money on one guy that sucks against another guy that sucks.
Yeah, the line movement's crazy as well. Like I said, it was plus 150 and now it's like shooting up to 200. And based on what you said, I don't see how you can't bet it. It's like Gadzhiev, he's not dangerous. Yeah, there's risk that Lopes will get knocked out, but he's not the one to fucking do it. He doesn't even really throw his hands. He's like them calf kicks and avoiding the fight. Yeah, and I didn't even know they had internet in Bolivia, so that was surprising as well. How about your YouTube?
Hey, they lit me up in the comment section. I will say, we didn't think Gadzhi was that good, but we thought he was going to run through, the Medina guy. And Medina has since cut all the way down to 185, right? My man had something to lose in that fight, guys. Go back and watch. Medina almost broke him on enthusiasm. Like his unwillingness to quit, this guy Gadzhi was like, all right, it's time to wrestle because I don't know what else to do. I hit him with a bunch of punches and kicks and he wouldn't quit. So I don't think Gadzhi is really built to fight. That's just the way I'll leave it. Yeah. Next up, we've got Nicolle Caliari taking on Ernesta Carcequeta, and I think we've got another wide line, if I'm being frank. Do I think Carcequeta has a decent enough skill set? Yeah, I mean, she goes out there, she competes, she throws very high volume for WMMA. I like to see that. I thought pre-UFC, massive red flags in the grappling. I think since she's been in the UFC, we've seen some marginal improvement. She's 26. She's getting better over time. But let's talk about Caliari on the other side, man, because I feel like last time out against Corinne Laframboise, she goes out there, she's landing some big shots on the feet. She's getting multiple takedowns. She gave up a takedown, which does make me worry. Maybe her cardio is going to fade out in an extended fight that gets a little more difficult because she does seem like a muscle head. She does seem like she's trying to finish people and go crazy, but she's also a pretty violent woman, right? She's out there landing some big shots, some big impactful throws. And then as soon as she got an opportunity, she committed to that armbar. How many times do we see somebody get an armbar, then a scramble ensues after, and they just kind of lose it and look for top position? She was like, no, you ain't getting that back out. Grabbed it again, re-cinched it, and almost broke the girl's arm. Corinne Laframboise is a black belt. That is her claim to fame. That is like her best skill set in mixed martial arts is her jiu-jitsu. And she owned her there. After getting takedowns, after landing some shots on the feet, she goes down to her back and then finds an armbar from the full guard. I was like, kind of impressed. So a purple belt submitting a black belt in a fight where she was having a lot of success. I'm like, I don't know that this Caliari girl is the walkover that the market expects her to be. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I was just trying to pull up my notes for it. Yeah, I agree completely, man. I think there's two X factors in this fight. It's the cardio of Ernesta and the unknown on the Caliari side. And then it's the wrestling of Caliari against Ernesta, who we know has shit wrestling, even up to the Barbosa fight, because that's what bit her up in the ass. She could have won that fight cleanly. Barbosa was gassed after round one, but she made mistakes, man. And, Barbosa was able to implement some grappling, even though she was on death's door. Her cardio failed her. So, yeah, that's kind of just the way I see it, man. And based on that alone, I think the line's wide. It should be closer to a pick-'em. It's women's MMA. Are you really going to trust Ernesta at this price tag? Not me. And it's getting even worse. I see Caliari at one point. She was up to plus 230 range. So, yeah, I agree with what you say. I think she's got some power in her, Caliari. I've seen her hit some judo takedowns to get girls to the mat. Ernesta kind of stays to the mat. I don't know whether that's some improvement she's going to be making, but she kind of stays down there. I think if she tries to get back to her feet, it's going to be elementary, and she might even get her back taken. And we see, her snatch up the neck, take the back straight away, and you get a flash rear naked choke. She has cardio, like I said, Ernesta. It would be a worry if you're betting Caliari. If there's no submission in round one, because she's taking her down, I'd be sweating it. I'd be like, here we go. I know what's going to happen now. Ernesta's going to put the volume on her. She's going to out cardio her, break her, and get a TKO win. So that is always a worry in this fight. But based on the number, I can't rely on that. I think Caliari's the side, and I think we're going to get a few dogs barking on this card, man.
Yeah, we see this one largely the same way. And the only other points I'll add here, Rich, Ernesta Carcicada, 7 professional fights. I mean, like, let's just be fair and honest. Who's she fighting? She fought Carly Judas. It was like 3-1. Like, again, I respect Carly. I think she's a solid enough fighter, for the low echelon of WMMA, right? Entry level. But it's like she absorbed like 160 significant strikes in that fight. It's not like she's some defensive savant either. Like, she's there to be hit. She takes a lot of chances. And on the other side, you mentioned it with Bruno Lopes. How about Caliari fought, I believe, in Invicta. I believe in LFA as well earlier on in her career. So I believe she's had some serious competitions. And, if you give me a Brazilian girl just at big plus money numbers at WMMA, it's going to be hard for me to ignore that most of the time, right? Unless you're a really special prospect. So Ernesta, shout out to her. Best of luck to her. But I think she's still got a lot to prove before I believe in these big minus 300 type price tags in the UFC, to be fair.
Yeah, I found my notes as well. That was important. Ernesta herself doesn't initiate any grappling like at any stage in the fight. She just doesn't want to know, not even a clinch. Even when she's like close, she doesn't use her range. And then when she gets into close range, when the strikes aren't there for her, she's not that good at dirty boxing. She won't throw elbows or anything like that, but she doesn't clinch, man. And I don't even think Caliari necessarily needs the takedown. I think she can reverse her, put her on the cage, kind of like how people do to Imavov, and she'll stay there. She'll get stuck. The clock will be burnt down, and Caliari can take breaks whenever she wants. So yeah, I think that's important to note also.
Good stuff, my man. And I want to say as well, 8 wins, all of them inside the distance. Her last loss was to Kay Hansen, a UFC level fighter, all the way back in 2019. And if you saw at the end of that Contender Series fight, who pops up celebrating? Marina Rodriguez, another UFC level fighter that she's been training with. So I just think that this girl kind of has a lot of the right elements outside of the cage to come in and surprise people here. So should be a fun fight, good scrap. And I'm excited to see how it shakes out. Next up, my man, we got a welterweight contest, and I'll be very brief on this, man. Jacobe Smith is a problem. He's a very scary athlete, powerful puncher, and his wrestling, I think, is vastly superior to Preston Parsons. So the thing I will give Preston Parsons, he's got a lot of MMA experience. He's been around for a long time. He's a tough guy. He wants it, doesn't quit on himself very easily. However, he's there to be hit, right? And I don't think he's as athletic as Jacobe, and I don't think he's as fast. I don't think he could wrestle with him. I don't know where he's going to hang out with him. Like, I think he's just going to get smoked. So as far as I'm concerned, last time out, I picked Jacobe Smith by KO1 or unanimous decision on Contender Series because I think he's a fast twitch athlete. He's going to come out and try and kill you. And if he doesn't kill you, he's probably just going to dominate you over the course of 15 minutes. And I think he's probably going to do the same thing to Preston here. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll do a little bit more due diligence. This was a short notice announced fight. I believe Preston Parsons was supposed to have a different opponent, but Jacobe Smith, man, for me, problem for a lot of people. What about you?
Yeah, I like him as well, man. I think he's legit. He has some great wrestling. He seems to have decent cardio as well from what I'm seeing in his amateur fights. The only concern, though, is obviously the short notice. It's like 10 days and it's like just after Christmas. Who knows what he's been doing. I looked at his Instagram and it's a bit sparse, unlike the guy we was talking about earlier on short notice, Solecki. Solecki was out there putting posts up like, I want to fight. This was like a couple of days before Christmas. So, he's been chomping at the bit to get a fight, whereas I don't know what Smith's been up to. Maybe this is just his opportunity, just to get some money, get that first fight under his belt. And he's like, hey, I'll take the opportunity, win or lose. So that would be a concern. There are problems with Parson. He struggled with Elder, who was a weight class below him, didn't get the submission. He really disappointed me in the fight against Oban Elliott. I don't think Elliott's as good as the hype would have you believe. But Parsons was really flat in that fight. He didn't do what I expected him to do. So yeah, I don't think Parsons is for real. I think ordinarily without the short notice, I'd be taking the other guy all day or looking for a prop if the money line is shit. But with the short notice, I'll probably just stay away altogether. But yeah, my pick's Smith as well, man, probably.
All right. So we see this one the same way. Tough out for Preston Parsons. I think he's got a negative record right now in the UFC. You mentioned it, one of his wins against a lightweight. I didn't even think he was going to win that fight, to be honest with you. So I'm just not a Preston Parsons guy. Wish him nothing but the best, but I think he's in over his head here. Want to say shout out to the chat, guys. We got a lot of people here rocking with us. We got a new time. So I appreciate everybody who's finding out, hey, we're on a new time. Plug it out. Let people know. Tell them, hey, the show's on. Let them know. Hit it like. That's going to be really important for us as well, because we're trying to make sure everybody knows new time, same channel. God bless you all. I appreciate the support. Now, next up, my man, we got Thiago Moises taking on Trey Ogden. And I'll just be honest with you, Rich. I one time bet Thiago Moises against Joel Alvarez as a favorite, and I said I will never bet Thiago Moises as a favorite again. Now, Joel Alvarez has gone on to have an exceptional UFC career, so it's not like it was like, this loss. It's because of how the fight played out. He didn't do anything. The fight starts, he's got his hands up, Joel starts throwing, and he just kept his hands up and got finished, right? It was one of those times where you realize this guy does not like to be under fire. And if you bring the fire to him 100%, he will just not like it. Benoit Saint Denis, did he have some great technical sophistication that he lorded over Thiago Moises? No, but I picked him to win that fight. I bet him to win that fight because I was like, he is going to 100% be aggressive from the outset, and Thiago Moises is not going to like that. And Trey Ogden's not really that guy. He doesn't quite fit that archetype. But Thiago Moises' best set of skills, in my opinion, is on the mat. He's a very good jiu-jitsu player. He's one of the only guys to take down Islam Makhachev, right? I mentioned that in some of my content earlier this week on Twitter. But seriously, he's like a very impressive guy in the grappling. But we also just know he's not a very assertive fighter. He kind of takes the fight that you give him. And I think the last time that he had a really great, striking performance that I can remember is the Alex Hernandez fight, or maybe against who is that guy on short notice that didn't want to be there? I can't. Mitch Ramirez, I think it was, right? Yeah. Those are his only two good striking performances that I can remember in the UFC. I bet him against Hernandez plus 199, and he went out there and just jabbed him up from the outside. Kept it basic. But I don't think Thiago Moises really likes fighting. I think he's a very uncomfortable fighter for a guy who's been doing it for so long, who has so many fights. And I think Trey Ogden is a good game planner. So the one thing I want to say, shout out to Thiago Moises. He went to the Fighting Nerds, gym that we love and respect, gym that's been very successful in the UFC in 2024. I don't know if he's got it, though. I don't know if he wants to be here anymore. And chalk prices with Thiago Moises is not something I'm super passionate about. Trey Ogden's been submitted before, but kind of weird, gimmicky fashion. Most of the time in the UFC, he's been physically dominant in the grappling. Loic Radzhabov is a big guy. He's strong as shit. I thought that was kind of where the rubber was going to meet the road for Ogden. And he was dominating him late. I couldn't believe it. Just horsing him around, getting to the mount. I was like, Trey Ogden, if he knew how to finish a fight, maybe could be something. So he's old, but he's a guy that runs his own gym. He seems like he's very serious about staying in shape and, getting supplementation and whatever it takes to compete at 35. So I don't love this fight from a betting standpoint, but I guess if you pressed me, I kind of think Trey Ogden's live here. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, well, he's in good company because Moises is on the juice as well and always has been. It surprised me that he's at 28 there. My eyes are shit. Moises,
29.
29. Yeah, I thought he was in his early 30s, man, 32, 33. Seems like
me too. I want a birth certificate on that one. I don't know if that's sad enough to me.
Yeah, his jiu-jitsu is legit. I think both of them at heart are jiu-jitsu guys, transferring to MMA and then, learning as they go. Neither striking is great, to be honest. Ogden, he's awkward. Reminds me of Jordan Levitt a bit, minus the twerking. He has a similar style. He's got the jiu-jitsu in his back pocket, but he tries these unorthodox strikes, but he makes it work for him. But yeah, Moises should win this, man. It's all about, like you said, game planning, and Moises doesn't game plan very well. Ogden does. So yeah, although he should, Moises, implement his jiu-jitsu, because I think if it was a pure grappling match, he'd submit him. I just don't trust him to do that. I don't trust him at the price. So that's probably why I'll be off him. Unless they give a stupid price on the submission, like plus 400, then I might be interested. But yeah, it's a lack of trust in Moises to get involved in this fight. And I don't like the Ogden side, so I'm out for that reason. But yeah, just a weird fight, man. And usually when it's two jiu-jitsu guys, it ends up being a TKO, if anything. You know, that's usually how it goes. Or if you get two stand-up guys, someone pulls out a fluke submission. But yeah, I like Moises, and he should get the submission if he pushes the grappling, in my opinion.
I wanted to answer the chat here. Dixon says, did Ogden get outstruck by Levitt? Yes, you are remembering that correctly. He also almost choked him unconscious. If you guys remember, he had a very tight guillotine on Jordan Levitt, which is why I told people Chase Hooper was going to dummy that man. And if you look at his other run of performances, right, he lost to Ignacio Bahamondes. He beat Daniel Zellhuber in one of the weirdest UFC fights you can ever go watch. Like, they just stood at range and kicked each other in the legs. He dominated Nicholas Mota and got absolutely robbed. Guys, that's one of the worst referee errors of the year. He was finishing a choke, and then they just stopped it, and then he didn't get the win. Like, unbelievable. And then he dominated Kurt Hollabaugh, who's a jiu-jitsu guy, and then he dominated Loic Radzhabov, who's a wrestler. So I think that Trey Ogden, kind of just a tricky, weird guy to get a good read on his fights. You could say a little bit the same about Moises. I agree with Uncle Weezy and yourself. If you like the Moises side, instead of laying the chalk, I would probably look at the submission prop. Listen, if Thomas Gifford can choke you, Thiago Moises can choke you, period, point blank. However, I'd feel much better about losing a plus 500 shot on Thiago Moises than I would about backing Thiago Moises at minus 175, and then he goes out there and lays an egg, which he has done before. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Next up, guys, we've got the bane of my existence, Ihor Potieria taking on Marco Tulio here. And I just don't think Ihor Potieria is very good. I don't think Marco Tulio is exceptionally good either. I remember the UFC didn't want to sign him after his first win on Contender Series, right? He went out there against Yusri Belgarui, another guy who was a two-time Contender Series vet, didn't get the sign. And it's like, you look at what Marco Tulio does. He's a powerful guy, probably a more well-rounded game than Potieria, but I don't know that his ceiling's extremely high. I just think they're matching him up for what should be an easy win right now, because Ihor Potieria just does not strike me as UFC level. After all the tape that we've watched, after all the footage, he's had a rough run. They've given him brutal matchups, but he's just never shown me something where I was like, wow, what a performance. The Robert Burchek fight, even, he kind of looked a little bit winded late in that fight. He landed some decent shots. I don't think he's useless, but he's just not very good. So I'm not passionate about this fight. How about you, Rich? Did we lose Rich for a second? All right, Rich, we're going to bounce you for 1 second, my man, and hopefully you can pop back as soon as your internet joins us. But in any case, guys, what I'm looking at here is a fight where we got a 30-year-old Marco Tulio making his UFC debut. The plus sides that you want to give to Ihor Potieria, he has more experience, right? So we look at Ihor Potieria, he has more professional fights, 28 professional fights. He's got more UFC experience under his belt as well, and he's the younger guy. So if you guys just look at one of the old system plays that I used to consider was younger fighter with more professional or UFC experience at an underdog price tag. It is kind of hard to ignore that here. I would say it's probably a dog or pass situation for me, but the athleticism gap is huge. I may just end up passing, and I look at a guy like Tulio, probably a little bit more marketable than a guy like Potieria as well. So it's just not a great fight for me. Not a fight where I feel like I have a particularly strong read. The other thing I will note, though, is Potieria, he's competed at multiple weight classes at 185. I'm not sure if his durability is going to hold up there. We've kind of seen him get hurt a little bit at 185 when he's making this cut. And I do think, at 205, he's probably not big enough to compete, but I don't know that the weight cut was extremely beneficial either. I think the lack of skills just has been shown. But with that being said, guys, we can move along to the next fight. We will circle back with Rich when available to discuss that fight. What we have next up for you guys is a 125-pound contest. This is going down between Jose Johnson and Felipe Bunes. And I will say this, man. I thought Felipe Bunes is old to be in the UFC flyweight division with very little experience. He's got a lot of losses under his belt, man. 13-7. And then you look at the Jose Johnson side, 16-9. A lot of losses combined between these two guys. So, the difference is Jose Johnson, I think, is starting to get into the better form of his career. If you look at him, he's 29 years of age. Last time out against Asual Mabayev, very difficult ask. But prior to that, he submitted Chad Hellinger, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a guy who's very tough, a guy who really wants to go out there and compete and scrap. And yeah, Chad was undersized in that fight. But most opponents are undersized compared to Jose Johnson. What's interesting in this contest, Felipe Bunes is going to be able to meet him in terms of the reach, 71 inches for both guys, but the height is a massive differential for Jose Johnson. He's very tall. He's getting more crafty and a little bit better in the grappling as he goes on. And Felipe Bunes, he was dealt from the bottom of the deck. Let's be fair about that, right? He got beat by Joshua Van, a guy that most people don't want to fight, a guy that most people, are seeing is a potential future star in the UFC flyweight division. But even in that contest, Bunes came out there. He started to throw aggressively early. I don't think he's got the cardio to go 15 minutes. And one thing that starts to get worse as you get older, cardio. Right? It's not something that gets better typically as you get older. I thought Jose Johnson chasing down Chad Hellinger in the third round was actually an impressive feat from him. And he broke him, right? And Chad is a tough guy. He's a difficult guy to break. Most of his career, guys, you go back and look, he's winning round threes. He's finishing guys in the third round. Jose Johnson, I thought, took a step forward in that fight. So for me, the pick here is Jose Johnson, but I don't feel extremely bullish and confident. I do think Bunes is going to give him some scares early. If he could get to him with power, if he can put him in some disadvantageous grappling situations, but ultimately I prefer the poise, the youth, and the cardio of Jose Johnson. Rich, welcome back to the show, my brother. We will circle back to the 185-pound prelim between Marco Tulio and Ihor Potieria to hear what you have to say, my man.
My bad, bro. Fucking internet.
Not a worry at all.
Ihor, per Instagram, he's been hanging out with his chick, making stupid reels and stuff about their time in fucking Las Vegas or wherever it is. I don't even know where he trains. He's not taking it serious. He has a puncher's chance, but I like Tulio to win. And that's pretty much it for that one.
All righty, on to the next one, my man. I was just discussing Jose Johnson and Felipe Bunes while you weren't here. I don't think extremely highly either of these guys. I don't think they're destined for the title level or something. You could tell that with the 16 combined pro losses, but I ultimately just lean towards the Jose Johnson side based on the youth, based on the size, based on the fact I think he's got a little more piss and vinegar. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I think this move to 125 would be good for him, man. I think that this other guy is, he's got an arm bar on him. He gasses in fights. He's nothing special. He's old for the weight class. I think Johnson will probably be too much for him, and Johnson will end up getting a submission. See what either by submission is compared to the Johnson by submission. Do some price shopping and see if you can, see what those are. But yeah, ultimately, I like Johnson. I think he gets his submission at some point in the fight, probably round 2 or 3 when Bunes gasses.
Well, that makes 2 of us, Rich. I went to the well with that already once. I picked Joshua Van via round 2 or 3 club and sub, and he could have done whatever he wanted. I was sick to my stomach. He just decided to beat the shit out of him instead. But I do think gas is a big problem here. Late round props, the submission angle, I think all of that is live here. So great shouts, Rich. We totally agree on this fight. Now let's start the main card. We've got a fun one, man. We've got the Dr. Uros Medic. I think he's the superior striker. I think he's a little bit more varied in his attack. But on the other side, we've got Punahele Soriano. This was a Division III college wrestler. Y'all know, go get some respect from me if you're a D3 college wrestler. And Punahele, I thought his last fight against Baeza, was it disappointing that it took him a little while to finish? Sure, but did it actually show some improvements in his game? I thought it did. He went out there and took the guy down relentlessly when he needed to. He beat the shit out of him, right? He landed 1 million strikes. And I just thought that what we saw was a more comprehensive pressure-based approach. Coming forward, trying to land his power shots, and then getting to work on his takedowns. The one thing that's been a massive problem for Uros Medic, he is not a very good wrestler or grappler at all, period. And Mirtabek Orobai, very solid fighter. But look at the difference between when he goes against, Mateusz Rumbeski, a guy who can, stay in the fire a little bit, defend some takedowns, 155-pounder, by the way. He had a much more difficult fight. Against Uros Medic, he said, hey, sit down, thank you anyway, give me the neck, and we're done playing here. And that didn't surprise me, right? I just thought what I had seen from Uros Medic was Jalen Turner, lightweight, was able to go out there and kind of dummy him in the grappling, right? Well, as soon as he goes to the ground, he looks like he's hopeless and had no idea what to do down there, and Jalen Turner was able to put him away. Then you look at that fight with Orobai. Punahele Soriano is not on the level of either one of those guys in the grappling. But when I look at what he does do well, he's a blockhead of a guy. He's pretty tough, right? I do think the way you get to him is with body kicks, right? We saw Brendan Allen have a ton of success with the body kicks. Roman Kopylov crucified him with the body kicks. I think that when you look at what he does well, shoots takedowns, right? He's a powerful guy. He can get the takedowns. He also tore, I believe, his ACL or something in his knee when he was fighting Maximov, and they had that awkward split decision type fight. I don't think Maximov won that fight, but if he did, it was from Puna, being like pressed against the fence and really having a hard time disengaging from the wrestling and the grappling. So I think both guys have a chance to win this fight, meaning Uros Medic, I think if the fight plays out purely on the feet, he's going to look like the favorite in hindsight. But I think that if Puna gets to takedowns early and often in this fight, number one, I don't think Medic is going to keep getting up, right? I don't think his get-up game is very comprehensive or very sound. And I do think that Puna showed in his last fight a better resolve to keep somebody on the ground. And if he's able to put a good ride on this guy, I don't trust Uros Medic, period, point blank. The other thing I will leave you guys with before I kick it to Rich, Matthew Semmelsberger had him doing the dance, had him very hurt. And then Matthew Semmelsberger did Matthew Semmelsberger things, fell off over time. I don't think he's in the UFC anymore. I'd have to double check that, but I believe he's been cut from the promotion. He's a guy that's certainly been on hard times in recent years. And Uros was on the verge of being finished in that fight, and then he rallied. He came back. Tough guy, but I don't think he's like a head and shoulders above his competition. Tim Means, ancient, right? Just has been on the finishing block for a lot of guys lately. And I thought Tim Means might go out there and take him down. So Tim Means died before he could try. I think Punahele Soriano's got enough of a chin that he could go out there and try to take him down. And I think if he does, I have not liked what I've seen from Uros Medic on the ground, period. What about you, Rich?
I'm on the other side, man. I like Medic, and I don't think that Puna, just based off that last fight, is now some great wrestler and he's going to be able to implement that on everyone. I think it was the competition he had, Baeza. I think he's just cooked and he was just showing up. And after he took a few hits, got taken down a few times, he just kind of quit in there and didn't have the same fire that he's had early on in his career. Crazy
really, late stoppage. Poor bastard, man.
Oh yeah, he got fucked up, man. For what, 40K or some shit. This is a weird one, man. They're both Ali Sleaze fighters, which I don't like. I think that's a weird one. I'm lazy with stats and whatnot, but I've seen this a couple of times when two guys are fighting and they're both from, they both have him as their manager. It usually goes to decision. But like I said, I'll have to go back and look at that. I like Medic. I like him by decision. I think he's got superior stand-up. I think all the same problems are still there from Puna, and there's some recency bias, and people are going to see him as, he's a wrestler now. He's turned a corner. He's able to implement this and that, and I just don't think he is. I think people like Jalen Turner, with the metrics he has, just a different animal than someone like Puna. And who was the other person? Orobai, just relentless pressure. That was just, a bad matchup for Medic as well. But I don't think Puna's built the same in terms of that. I don't think he can continue to push for takedowns when he isn't getting them. I think he'll get discouraged. He'll gas himself out, and that's when Medic could likely finish him. But I'd be more inclined to say it's going to be a Medic decision, man. I'll go against the grain because I think the odds are mostly likely going to have it as a Medic KO as his method of victory.
Yeah, I think that my differential here is I would maybe make Medic a -135, a -150 favorite. I think he should probably be favored in this fight. But when I look at the Puna side, the thing that I like he used to be at 185, right? And at 185, I don't think his physicality was translating. Look at his measurables, right? 5'11" at 185. There's guys that are 6'3", 6'4", big, strong guys. You're going to have a very hard time moving those guys around. You're going to have a very hard time wrestling them. These guys at lightweight that move up on 2 weeks' notice can fucking pick up Uros Medic and take him down and dominate him. So I'm like, Puna at 185, maybe he can't take down Brendan Allen and these guys, but I'm like, if he goes out there and somebody gets to him in the back, Eric Nixon grabs him by two shoulders and says, hey, listen to me. If you take this guy down 3 times, we win the fight. I think he could win it. So that for me is the one thing that makes me, at least a little bit interested in Puna's chances at 170. At 185, I thought the guy was cooked. At 170, I actually thought he showed the right step against Baeza. But to your point, how do you measure that talent evaluation? It's kind of hard, right? Baeza is cooked, in my opinion. I didn't like that matchup. So, I was proud of what Puna showed there. Step in the right direction. Let's see if D3 Wrestling can get one on the board. Me and Rich finally found a point of disagreement. I'm going to go ahead and reluctantly pick Puna Hele Soriano. But I do think it's a fight where Medic probably a deserved favorite, but I would go a little bit lesser on the confidence interval.
Do you know what I'd say on that, though? Like, I think he's just fucked. Puna, it's like if he fights at 185, he's undersized. If he drops to 170, he's compromising his cardio every time. And like I said, I just think the last fight was like a special case because Baeza was checked out before the fight even started. I think he's just always going to have a problem, man. And I think the move to 170 was probably out of desperation.
I think so too.
But we'll leave it at that.
Hell yeah. All right, my man. Next up, I think this is one of the best fights on the card, period. You've got Austin Bashi taking on Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod is what they have him listed at. I call him the prospect killer. If you remember back, Rich, I've admitted on this show many times, I've gotten this guy's fights wrong. And part of it's out of scorn. The guy used to miss weight for every fight at 135. So then I'd be like, fuck this guy. He's lazy. He's not shit. In the third rounds, this guy is typically ready to rumble, right? And I thought last fight out was a weird one, just plain and simple, right? He went out, he's a minus 250 favorite against Julian Erosa, and I thought he was going to knock him out in the first round. He went out there, he was swinging wild, he was going crazy, he was trying to put it on him, he was landing some decent shots, and Erosa showed I'm not going nowhere, and he kind of broke mentally in that moment. He was like, whoa, I threw too much, I'm too tired, and he started to get desperate. I will say, Erosa's got a hell of a guillotine, we know that, right? I've finished a couple guys now in a row with that, but you look at that fight, it showed a little bit of the immaturity of Christian Rodriguez, a little bit of, maybe front loading his offense isn't going to work for him. We've seen so many times, round 2, round 3, he rallies back, front loading his offense, it didn't work. Against Austin Bashi, I'm drawing a blank right now. He comes from like a unique ethnic group that's like ethnic Christians from Iraq. I'll look it up while you're talking, I'll come back with it. But basically, this guy comes from like a small, tight-knit community. You listen to his interviews, he says, I don't do nothing in my life but train, fight, sleep, eat. He's like, that's my whole life. I don't do nothing else. And I kind of believe him, right? He's one of those guys, he's been in the game for a long time. But let's talk about the potential concerns. Number one, we've got a UFC debutant. We've seen great fighters, very solid UFC fighters, come in and just lay an egg in their UFC debut, don't look anything like themselves because they go from fighting in fights that don't mean as much to the most important fight of their career, and they blow it. So I look at Austin Bashi. Last time out, Dorian Ramos is a skinny, fat guy on 7 days' notice, and he was giving him some run. He was making him work in that first round, and by round 2, Dorian Ramos was ready to go home. It's just that simple. So Austin Bashi did his thing. Very good back taker, very consistent and dogged takedown attempts. He'll keep going. He shot himself headfirst into the fence. He got hit with a big knee in that fight. There was a couple things that made me say, if this guy Bashi gets in there with a guy who's serious, competent, ready to go, things could get a little dicey for him. And I picked him in that fight. I picked him inside the distance. I picked him by submission. Thought he was going to have a lot of success. But now I have to try and project out how he's going to do against C-Rod. And if you look back, C-Rod hasn't been fighting, easy pickings, really. He fought Raul Rosas Jr. Everybody thought Raul was going to run through him. Raul came out hot in round 1, started good with the wrestling, and he gassed himself out. He looked for the finish. He looked for the face crunch. He tried to do everything right. And C-Rod was able to keep moving, keep rallying. And by round 2, he was beating his ass. Round 3, he should have finished him. Like, there's just no excuse. He should have finished him. You look at the Cameron Simon fight. Cameron Simon had the cardio to go, right? It wasn't like he ran out of gas. He was ready to keep pushing in round 3 until he got hit with a couple big knees to the body, until he got hit with a couple big punches upstairs. And he was like, fuck, now I'm hurt. Now I'm scrambled. Now my head is fucked up. Like, he was trying, man. He had all the energy to go, and he just got his ass beat. And you look at C-Rod, he's a very clever striker. I think he's much better on the counter than he is trying to go lead the dance. So if you want to come after him, he's very good at sprawling out on takedowns as he starts to get your timing, getting out of bad positions when you start to put him in bad grappling situations. The guy's pretty clever and savvy. You look at the guys he's lost to. Jonathan Pierce, huge 145er. What's his name last time out? Julian Erosa. He's like 6'1". He's a middleweight. I'm half kidding, but you just look, he's lost to 2 giants at featherweight. Those are his 2 losses. The other guys, he goes out there and beats. By the way, Isaac Dulgarian, in my opinion, same or better prospect than Bashi, as I saw it at the time. The one difference I will say is Bashi's had more fights. Bashi has a little bit more proven cardio. But in terms of like, who's the most dangerous one-round fighter in the featherweight division? Like, if we're not talking about Diego Lopes or Ilia Topuria, like, Isaac Dulgarian's going to come up in the top 5. He's fucking brutal. Takes people down, dominates in round 1, puts hammers on your head. You don't want to fight that guy for 5 minutes, period. And you look at that fight. Christian takes the damage in round 1, survives all the bad positions. Dude, by round 3, Isaac is hanging on for dear life. And I'm a huge Isaac fan. But you just look back at that. C-Rod plays for keeps, man. And he will hurt you. His timing on the knees is impeccable. I don't think there's been a fight I watched. I went back and watched every fight, basically, of his on Fight Pass. I don't think I watched a fight where he didn't land a fucking big, impactful knee to the body. Big knees upstairs. He catches people taking bad takedown attempts and knees them right in the face consistently. Raul Rosas Jr., if he didn't have a 20-year-old chin, was getting sent to the shadow realm by that knee. So I'm just like, I look at these guys and I'm like, both of these guys are talented fighters. Both these guys really want to be here. Both these guys, are serious. Bashi's a little bit more prepared in my view, as like, he does everything right. Probably doesn't smoke, probably doesn't drink, probably doesn't go out to the casino like C-Rod. But it's just like C-Rod has had all these UFC fights under his belt. And now he's coming off of a loss. What does that typically do to somebody? Motivation. He's going to want to win this one. He's going to want to get some get back. By the way, Anthony Pettis doesn't fuck around, okay? Putting lots and lots of dollars on Christian Rodriguez in most of these fights. Why? Because he knew that this kid is fucking good and he can really fight. So a lot of times, Anthony Pettis just been showing you his $20,000 ticket on C-Rod. Don't be surprised if Sunday morning he's got another one. So I'm just saying, I look at this fight as Austin Bashi taking a step up, a huge step up from Dorian Ramos to Christian Rodriguez, a serious UFC fighter. And I know that this guy can kill prospects. I know that for a fact. So for me, it's a dog or pass situation. What about you?
Yeah, I think you were far too kind to Bashi, man. I've put Bashi as mush of the week. And I am going to, tally these up this year. So when people come at me and say, you haven't won one in 50, I can say, actually, I have. And here are the stats. So we'll see about that this year. So I'll start off. Bashi, you mentioned it. He's 23. He's young. It's his debut. He's on the main card as well. This is a lot of pressure for somebody so young. And then he's fighting Rodriguez, man. This isn't like a easy opposition. The UFC are doing him no favors. I think Rodriguez is well-rounded. You said it yourself. He's training with Duke Rufus, has been for the longest time. His striking is good, man. It's very technical. He's patient with it. And that's one of the things I like most about him. He's patient in fights. He'll allow Dulgarian to do what he wants in round 1 because he knows if he stays patient and does the right things, he can come back and he can have his moments. But yeah, let me trash Bashi, man, because I think he's absolutely shit. I think he's a Mike Breeden against, a Jubilee against Mike Breeden. He's a fucking bomb film against Dalby, and I can't wait for him to get knocked out or choked out, man. I think he's doing this because his brother's doing it. I think he's a fake. He's trying to follow in the footsteps. His regional competition's been shit. I think he's limited in his, what he's able to do. I don't think he's got any striking. I think it's all about looking for a double leg. When he looks for his takedowns, he leaves his neck exposed. So he's primed to get guillotined by somebody. I think his jiu-jitsu's like blue belt level. All he wants is to put the body triangle on you and try and get a rear naked choke. This isn't somebody who's going to be transitioning to arm bars or looking for twisters like Bryce Mitchell or any of that shit. It's literally he wants a rear naked choke and to use his steroids to blast W and get you to the mat. And that's what he's going to do. And because it's his debut, because it's on the main card and he's going to feel uncomfortable, he's going to repeatedly go for that takedown. He isn't going to stand. Because if he does, he knows he's going to get tagged by Rodriguez. Because if this was a boxing match, he'd get knocked out within a couple of rounds, man. He's just not a fighter, quote unquote. And people are giving me hate saying, you know, his physique looks great. Like, no homo, man. Great. He looks fucking fit. He looks like he's in shape, but that doesn't translate to he's a good fighter. It means absolutely nothing, man. And they also want to point out the Erosa fight. Like, that's not a good look for Christian Rodriguez. If Bashi fought Erosa, it would be exactly the same. Erosa would outlast him because Erosa's got great cardio. He scrambles. He's got heart. He might be chinny, but he's got a lot of other things on his side. And he would absolutely submit Bashi as well, man. So I don't know what people are smoking. You mentioned all the other things as well. Rodriguez, the level of competition he's been fighting, the likes of Bulgarian, Rosas, Pierce, and like you said,
Simon. Like, he hasn't fought a schlub yet in the UFC. Period.
I bet.
What about Weems? Maybe, but
I bet most of these guys, if they fought Bashi, I don't think Bashi's for real at all, and he's always had a metrics disadvantage. For him, for the most part, Rodriguez. And now he hasn't, you know, he's fighting this kid who's small, stocky. And I just think the lights are going to get to him. And Rodriguez is going to finish him. And I'm going to fucking bet it as much as I can, man.
Hell yeah. And looking back, he's a Chaldean. I've never heard it pronounced. I'm only reading it. So they love this guy, right? Like, he's like a local star in his town in Michigan and these kind of things. I don't think he's a bad fighter, but here's the other thing, Rich. He's 23, you know, and I try and talk about this all the time. I'm a young man, right? I think I'm stronger, a little bit better, more savvy, a more knowledgeable guy than I was at 23, but physical development is real, right? You talk about these guys, men develop physically until the age of 25. Science, just go look it up. It's not my opinion. And it's like, when you take these guys that are really young, what happened when Raul Rosas went against Christian Rodriguez? He had some success early, but maybe that man strength would have helped in round 2 and 3. When he's trying to get those takedowns, he's getting a little desperate. And then C-Rod, poised, breathing. He's been in these fights, man. You can go back and watch him when he was a kid against Mendoza, right? It's on UFC Fight Pass. Go watch it. They're doing amateur fights. They're outside. They're punching. They're kicking. The guy's got his back the whole fight. He never gives up. He never even let the guy get close. And by the way, at the end of every round, he's back on top. Like, the kid is just weird at controlling him. Everybody tries to control him. Everybody tries to grapple him, and they all get tired doing it. Everybody to a man. So Julian Erosa pulled that one guillotine. Great move, right? Everybody else that tries to grapple the guy, just go watch his career. They get exhausted trying to grapple him. He is very hard to control, very hard to hold down. Duke Rufus teaches his guys how to turn into body triangles, how to elevate the hips so guys fall over the top. And Bashi was making, in my opinion, some suboptimal decisions against Ramos, trying to get desperate and take the back, and Ramos eventually folded and capitulated and gave it to him. But to your point, Rich, he's an IBJJF brown and brown belt world champion. You know who else was? Melissa Mullins. And she got out-grappled by Nora Cornole. I'm not ever believing an IBJJF credential again till I see it put to work against good fighters inside the octagon. And I do think when you look at Bashi's run, he didn't fight terrible guys on the regional scene, but he didn't fight one guy that is Christian Rodriguez's level. And Christian Rodriguez has fought UFC level guys since before he got to the UFC. So just go back and look at the guys that he's fought. He's had a much more serious career to this point in the UFC at higher stakes against bigger names. And he's 27. He's not an old man. He's not washed. He's not past it. I'd say he's probably as motivated as he's ever been coming off of a loss like that, that kind of set back his career. So we got Moises saying Reyes Cortez is better than Austin Bashi. And I'll just say this. I think the only time I ever bet Christian Rodriguez, I laid the chalk with him against Reyes Cortez on Contender Series. So for me, I've been a believer in Christian Rodriguez for a long time. The weight missing and everything else pissed me off. But now at 145, unless he's going against giants, unless he's going against long-limbed guys, I think he's going to have a lot of success. And the other thing I will mention here, sorry about that. If anybody heard, my wrestling alarm just went off with some James Brown, so apologies. But when you look at a guy like Rodriguez, he nearly finished, what's his name, twice, Pierce with the guillotine. So if you want to wrestle and grapple all night, he's going to try and choke you. He's going to try and rip your head off. And I do think that Bashi is used to having his way. When you're not having your way, Chael Sonnen said it's the fight that's harder than you expected it to be. I think Bashi's got a lot of confidence. I think it's going to get beat out of him on Saturday night, period.
I couldn't find one fight where Bashi faced adversity, like when he was on his back, and someone was on top. And yeah, did you know this little fucker's a black belt, 23 years old? Don't know who the fuck's giving him that. Yeah,
he's trained at the same place since he was like 10 or 11, if I'm remembering correctly. Lifelong with the same gym, and he said, I'm never leaving. I'm always staying here in Michigan and whatever. So he's got his thing. He's a pretty solid wrestler. He's a pretty solid grappler. I take nothing away from the guy. I think he's got a bright future, but it's going to be a rude awakening, I think, at 145. I do think at 135 he'd have a much better chance of succeeding, right? There's just a lot of big guys at 145, and he's going to be critically undersized throughout his career. And the other thing I'll say here is he spent a lot of time in the videos, the footage that I'm watching, working on his striking in the lead up to this fight. C-Rod is very comfortable as a counter striker. If this kid wants to go out there and try and strike with him all night, I think that would be a huge, huge mistake.
Yeah, I think it's
please.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say it's probably just a case of like, Mickey Gall, Sage Northcutt, when they come to the UFC, like Gall, for example, he's primarily a jiu-jitsu guy and he had to learn striking like on the job. And it's probably the same for Bashi. He's young, 23, primarily a guy who's in jiu-jitsu competitions, and he's probably just trying to show up the holes in his game. But it's too soon, man. Like, it's like people who bring in jiu-jitsu guys for like one camp and work with them for a month, and people are like, oh, he's going to defend takedowns and submissions now because he's worked with fucking Gordon Ryan or someone like that for a fucking month.
If it were that easy, everybody would do it. Next up, my man, we got Chris Curtis taking on Roman Kopylov. Rich, why don't we throw it to you first, my man? How do you see this middleweight matchup going down? Two guys that, had some pretty solid results, I feel, in 2024.
Yeah, I think that Kopylov will win. I'll get right to it. I thought it was funny, the whole debacle about Curtis saying he had spies in his camp and the rest of it. And then he backtracked on it and made another video. It's like, this guy just loves to make videos. He loves to talk. He loves to interact on Twitter. And how many times have we seen that, man? Those people fail because they're concentrating on the wrong things. I've bashed his style plenty, Curtis, because he does the same thing in every fight, and he's a stubborn fucker. He does not adapt midway through. He tried to do it in the Hermansson fight. That was the epitome of what he's about. He'll stand in the center of the cage. He'll wait to counter strike. He won't offensively wrestle. He won't offensively try to grapple or push the fight or do anything. He wants to counter strike and wait for you to do your thing. Hermansson didn't. He hit and ran, point fighted, smart. And then, in round 3, he thought, okay, I'll try and dog walk Hermansson, and he couldn't find him, and the fight was over. He's a bit of an idiot. Like, his IQ's a bit low, both in the cage and out of the cage. I think this is Kopylov's fight to definitely lose. The only thing I don't like about Kopylov is after round 1, he does get a bit lazy with his striking, and he could get countered. But, he should have a speed advantage. He should be able to dart in and out. And kind of do like the Jack Hermansson game plan. Maybe try and go for a takedown, but not really wanting the takedown. Just give Curtis something to think about. But primarily keep it on the outside, dart in and out, use your kicks, use the range, use your speed, and win a decision, man. But he could get clipped. I don't think Kopylov's for real. Yeah, he's had some good performances of late, but he's still got the ability in him to, look like he's minus 500 mid-fight and fuck it up. But I like Kopylov, man.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me. Frankly, I've done tape on a lot of these fights. This is one that I have not gotten to the tape yet. When you look at this matchup, Chris Curtis, for me, is like a pretty solid boxer, but that's about what he is, right? Like he's got half decent takedown defense. He's a good anti-grappler as well. Not easy to get one over on a guy like Curtis. But when I look at this matchup, I say to myself, okay, he's coming off that fight with Brendan Allen. I remember people thinking like that was a robbery on the night, and obviously Allen looked kind of like shit in his next fight. But when you look at, he was on a great run, right? Brendan Allen was on a very solid win streak, and Chris Curtis has one win via knockout against him. Then he goes back again. I thought he could have won that decision, certainly very close, split decisions in both of his last couple fights. So Chris is a guy that fights very close with most guys that he fights. I think the Jack Hermanson fight is a good pull because Jack Hermanson is like the only guy to get like a very clean, easy, clear decision over him in the UFC. The Kelvin Gastelum fight, super competitive. I thought it could have went either way. I believe he got eye poked. If my memory serves, the Imavov fight ended early. That was a weird one. Imavov is a top guy in the division. The Buckley fight has aged pretty well, right? Buckley obviously went down to 170 pounds. But he was able to cover up defensively in that fight and then knock him out. The thing that makes me weary for Kopylov here is when you look back, he was able to take down Cesar Almeida when shit got sideways, right? And just dominate him on the ground because Cesar Almeida, not very clever or sophisticated down there. He's more of a try and defend the takedown initially, but once he's flat on his back, like he's not Johnny Jiu-Jitsu. It's just not his game, right? He did a good job against Budka preventing bad positions. But when he's not able to prevent bad positions, he didn't know what else to do. So I just think that I'm looking at this fight. I say, Kopylov's got a big body, right? He's a long guy, long torso. I do think Chris Curtis, one of his like unheralded parts of his game, he fucking rips to people's body with his boxing and hurts them. Because a lot of guys in MMA think of punchers as like, they're going to come to my head. I have to keep a high guard. I got to keep shelling. And then Chris Curtis goes, whoa, and just like digs one really hard to your body and people react poorly. So I think that this is an honest fight. I think Kopylov should be favored. He has more tools. He's more likely to try to wrestle. He's more likely to throw kicks and implement that part of his game. But the one thing about Chris Curtis is he is a savvy boxer, man. I do think that as MMA fighters go, he's one of the best at just putting shots off his shoulders, not taking much too clean, and finding an opportunity to hurt you. His finishing instincts are poor, right? He let Brendan Allen off the hook a couple times in that most recent fight, but he was hurting him. And when Brendan Allen, a very proven back taker, was on his back, he continuously got out of it. So I'm like, when I look at this kind of fight, I say Kopylov should be favored, but he has enough vulnerabilities to me. Even go back and look at the Duraev fight. In that fight, Duraev had a fucking welt the size of, bejesus on his eye, and he wasn't able to put him away. It didn't show the greatest finishing instincts for me. So this is a weird middleweight scrap and one that I have to tape a little bit more. But there's your bullish case for Chris Curtis. Is I just think he might be able to compete with him in the boxing. So should be a fun fight.
Yeah,
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if he fucking retires, though. He could do something like that for sure. And act like he used to be a champion or something, put his gloves down, make a big speech in the center of the cage, and then Mike Bisping's like, okay, Chris, we got to go now, but thanks for everything. See ya. I think people have mentioned he's had injuries. He is old as fuck. He is slowing down. His agility has never really been a thing for him. And as you get older, like speed goes, agility, durability, the rest of it. So yeah, that could happen, man.
Yeah. So I guess my final thought here would be the chat seems pretty convicted that Kopylov is the side. I'm not trying to say like Chris Curtis is the side. I'm just saying like the way I see it, it's a fight that has some intrigue. I have to do the tape before I'd feel comfortable lining up with everybody on Kopylov. But yeah, I agree with the points made in the chat. Boxer versus kickboxer. Obviously, he's not going to keep the same kind of pace that a Fluffy Hernandez is going to keep. But it's just styles make fights. And I do think Kopylov's not afraid to go strike with anybody, right? He was out there striking with Roberson, striking with all these guys. But, I think he's still a work in progress as well. But a little bit higher ceiling, and especially given his age. Speaking of older guys that we can't evaluate their ceiling at middleweight, we got Abdul Razak Al Hassan taking on Cesar Almeida. Razak, hard done by the Cody Brundage fight. Cody Brundage got him again, right? He's gotten a couple guys with that little move, just poke the head out there, hang the back of your head, try and clip something off there. And see if you can get out of the fight early. But hey, it's a weird situation, right? I wish nothing ill about Cody Brundage. We've just seen it multiple times, right? It's not my opinion. You look at the Cesar Almeida side of things, like, he's a dangerous guy. I gave him a ton of credit coming in on Contender Series because I watched all the Pereira fights. Like, the guy's got a chin from Hades, certainly back in his heyday, right? He could take any punch to the face, keep coming forward, keep throwing. And when you look at some kickboxers, Yusri Belgarui, I would say, is like an example of a guy that didn't look like he had skills that really translated over cleanly to MMA. Cesar Almeida was like throwing Pereira, and like they were getting into these wild clinch exchanges and shit. I was like, you know what? This guy might actually have something for MMA. But then the Kopylov fight showed his limitations. I think that this is a bit of an IQ test. If Abdul Razak Al Hassan comes out here shooting takedowns, he's probably going to look, hindsight, like one of the easier fights for him to try and win in his career. He is a explosive round one knockout guy, but he also went to a competitive decision with Joaquin Buckley that has aged okay. So I think you look back, the problem is he doesn't have the cardio. He doesn't have the willpower when he gets tired. Some guys can get tired and keep competing. I think Abdul Razak Al Hassan, when he gets tired, his game starts to just fall apart and go to shit. So Cesar probably comes back on him late here. But the one thing I just want to note, Cesar Almeida was everything but knocked out against Roman Kopylov. He got hurt so badly in that fight and then was able to rally, stay in the fight, hang out on bottom a little bit. But it wasn't a very good showing for me, right? And Dylan Budka, what does that win mean, really? I don't know. So I now look at this fight as like Abdul Razak Al Hassan is definitely ready to age out of the UFC soon, but he almost killed Cody Brundage, who's a UFC vet, and now he is a UFC vet, taking on a guy that's not very experienced in MMA, period. So I don't know what to make of this one, man. Like, I guess I lean towards Cesar Almeida, but we just saw in his didn't he fight Potieria as well and like fouled him 7 times and looked like shit? Like, I just don't know if this guy is super serious. He trains at Extreme Couture. Looks like he's trying to make the right improvements, but what I've seen from him isn't enough to say he's a minus 300 fighter in the UFC. It's just not. What about you?
Al Hassan all day long. I love it. I think he's going to absolutely fucking smash Almeida. Almeida, I don't like these fucking, some of these Brazilians who aren't on the steroids, and Almeida's one of them, man. He should get on the sauce. They're notoriously people who get fat, when they give up fighting, when they are midway through their fights, they come in overweight a lot of the time, let themselves go. I don't know, maybe it's their diets, whatever it is. But yeah, I don't like Almeida. And then when it comes to the fighting, he went 3 rounds with Ihor in his last fight. He was getting taken down constantly, man. And Judo Al Hassan is capable of that. He has power. He takes people down. And I think this whole he doesn't have cardio or he has bad cardio is a misconception, man. In that Buckley fight, he was taking Buckley down in round 3. His will to win the fight is always there. He was winning the fight against Joe Pyfer till Pyfer got a takedown and used his size and superior grappling to get the submission. But yeah, Almeida isn't that. Yeah, Almeida's took people down, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that to someone like Al Hassan. I think he's up for this fight. I think age in this case is just a number, and Al Hassan still got it. He's training per Instagram and looking good. I think he can do whatever he wants to Almeida. I don't think Almeida's this great kickboxer or whatever as well, just because he's had glory fights or whatever prior to coming into the UFC, because he hasn't shown it. We've had that fight against Budka. He won that fight because Budka gassed and because he was just relentless in the pursuit of the takedown and couldn't get it. But Al Hassan can mix it up, man. He's got experience, far more experience than Almeida has in MMA. And I'm just not convinced by Almeida. Like, not sure what he is, not sure what the UFC want to do with him. He's old as fuck, doesn't really have a high ceiling. And this line, man, is just stupid. I'd be interested to see what everyone else is on. I'm just surprised nobody's making more talk about this. They're picking other underdogs like Chris Curtis, but I haven't really seen anybody mention Al Hassan. But he's definitely the side for me, man.
Yeah, and again, it's always weird to me when I'm the guy who was big up in Cesar Almeida and all the things that he did well prior to the UFC, but now I'm just looking and I'm like, I don't feel like he's shown me a lot since then. Like, I don't think he's shown me, wow, the game is translating as well as I thought to MMA. It's like, he's looking okay. He's not looking great. And Abdulrazak Al-Hassan on the other side, I thought he deserved the win. And some people gave me grief about this. Again, I'm not trying to make light of like, yeah, he did end up hitting Cody in the back of the head, and I feel sorry for Cody. Like, we don't want to see that, but you just look at the fight. He had already finished him, right? Like, he's doing everything he can to just put the finishing touches on this fight, and Cody Brundage is doing everything he can to hide his head and not intelligently defending himself, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm the ref. I called the fight off earlier, right? And instead, he lets him linger around there until there's a foul, and then they call the fight off. So I think that Abdulrazak, he's dangerous from the opening bell, in ways that I think Cesar is too. Cesar, the one thing I will give credit for is people are saying, maybe Cesar's not that good at kickboxing. I think he really is that good at kickboxing. I think, if my memory serves, he fought the number one guy in his weight class as recently as like 2021 or 2020 or something. He's going to close decisions. He's not bad, but he just wasn't the best. And so all these other guys are seeing Pereira and Izzy, and they're like, let me go see what it's like over there, see if I can make some more money. And I just don't know that he's got it. Also, look at his age. He came over late, right? So Alex Pereira is able to figure it out at 36 and 37, but he's working with Glover Teixeira. He's doing everything right. And I just think for Cesar, he's more been in the Extreme Couture room where he's getting a lot of sparring rounds and, looking to work with these MMA guys. But is he putting together a comprehensive game that's going to win fights at a high level? I'm not seeing that. So for me, Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, he's been in the UFC for a very long time. He's beaten UFC credible guys. I think that is a little bit more of a feather in his cap, especially at the price.
Yeah, and maybe if this was back in glory with the big gloves and he was fighting Alassane, I'd probably take him the majority of the time, but it's not. It's the small gloves. Alassane hits hard, and the KO can definitely come. And I have to trash Brundage, man, because you're too nice. Fuck that guy, man. He's a piece of shit. Like, zero integrity. I don't even know how he can go home and like look his wife in the eye. He's done it multiple times, checked out in fights when he could have continued. He's an absolute bitch, man, and fuck him. Like, he doesn't deserve any credit.
The Malkoun one was just offensive to everybody involved, I think. But he was just literally just trying to hide his head in that one. He can't convince me otherwise. But
bro, you know what,
Rich, you're my what's it called? My anger translator. If you know, I always say the nice thing about Cody, and then you say the true thing about Cody.
Do you know what? I'd be I contradict myself because I remember when Anthony Smith did it against John Jones. He could have took the DQ and he could have been champion and that. That's the only time when I would have said, fuck integrity. I'm taking that belt. I can then say that I've been a UFC champion. There's money that comes along with that in your next fight, etc. Endorsements you can get, sponsorships outside. That could have changed the life of Anthony Smith, and maybe he wouldn't be as fucked up as he is now or in the position he's in now. But when you're making 50K a fight and, you're fucking rubbing the back of your head like those shots were really that meaningful and you wasn't going to lose it anyway, it's just a bitch move, man. I don't respect it at all.
I just got sent down an Instagram wormhole for a second because my guy JB asked Almeida isn't with Glover anymore. I'm 99% sure he's based out of Las Vegas. Everything I saw on his Instagram recently was there too, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So if anybody wants to correct me in the chat, please go ahead and do so. The other thing I was saying is, guys, we are rounding into the co-main event of the evening. If y'all don't mind, do me a quick favor. Smash the like button, all right? Let everybody know in the comment section what you guys are looking to bet on today, because that's going to help the algo push us out a little bit, help people find the new time, and we really appreciate it. Getting to you guys Tuesday of fight week a little bit earlier. That's the goal moving forward, is to try and get these shows out earlier so you guys have time to watch, and we'll put timestamps and everything like that. So we'll do our part. If y'all don't mind, just do your part. Drop a like on the show. If you're new here, get subscribed to the channel. We're talking fights each and every week, and we appreciate the support. Now, without further ado, guys, let's move on to this co-main event of the evening. Santiago, the Argentine dagger, Ponzinibbio, is taking on Carlston Mozambique Harris. What a fight, man. What a freaking, spectacle. You've got two guys that are both on the upper echelon of age that we, see in this welterweight division in particular. I think the fresher guy is Carlston Harris. I think the more proven and experienced guy is Santiago Ponzinibbio. What a great dynamic. Rich, how do you see this one going down? First co-main event breakdown of the year. What do you think about this one?
I like Ponzinibbio, man. I think that he's going to get the W. Don't know whether it's going to be the KO or whether it's a decision. But I think Harris is just too limited. His striking is very elementary. He's a guy who wants to get takedowns and, implement his jiu-jitsu. But Ponzinibbio, I believe, is a black belt himself, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's ever been submitted. His takedown defense has been good throughout his career. At one point he was even a contender. I know he's had some up and down performances of late, but he definitely won that fucking Muslim Salikov fight. I'm convinced that was a complete robbery, if you want to go as far as to say that. But he definitely won, man. That was some bullshit. I just think it'd be a similar fight, man. I don't think Harris can trouble him on the feet outside of a lucky KO. I don't think he can get takedowns, and even if he did, I don't think he can get enough mat time to be able to sub Ponzinibbio. He's too, he's too much of a veteran. I think he's being a legit black belt himself, will be able to negate anything Harris can do with his front chokes and whatnot. Ponzinibbio all day, and I'm surprised by the line. I've got Harris at KO or bust with a fluke punch. Ponzinibbio has been wobbled in recent fights. He can get tagged, but I think he's going to use his experience, his length, footwork, the rest of it to comfortably win a decision or get a KO against Harris, man.
So me and Rich have had a lot of agreement on this fight card. I do think that this is one where we slightly disagree. Now, I do think Ponzinibbio has a path to a decision. I agree with you that he got jobbed out last time. Muslim Salikov, really dangerous striker. I think that when you look at what Ponzinibbio has always done well, he's got an electric jab. He is pretty difficult to take down. And so for a lot of guys earlier on in his career, like the best grapplers that he fought, you think of like a Gunnar Nelson, right? He just beat the shit out of them, right? He never let them get close, kept them at the end of his jab, and did a really good job. And I think that the one thing about Carlston Harris that's unique, his takedowns. Right? Like this guy is not looking to go, single leg, double leg. Like he might mix in that a little bit. He grabs a hold of people, upper body, and fucking sends them flying with huge, crazy throws. Like he's just one of these guys that has a unique style for MMA. He's like a clinch fighter, right? Jack Hermanson, same kind of deal. Is Jack Hermanson a double leg savant? No, but if you want to go upper body, chest to chest, like he'll try and just whip you over with a lat whip or something, go crazy on you. And when it works, he's able to implement that grappling game. So I think a 60 some odd takedown defense for Santiago Ponzinibbio, I think it's gotten a little bit worse over time, right? He used to be super bouncy with the footwork, in, out, like bouncing all the time. And now he's old, so he just can't do all that crazy shit anymore. He's a little bit more reserved and within himself. And the one fight that sticks with me, man, Jeremiah Wells, black belt, very strong. Solid, right? Can fight in a couple different positions. He's wild and reckless, but he's solid. One time, made a mistake, got a little too low on the takedown attempt. Carlston Harris, bing, bang, boom, in a fight he was losing, squeeze, and he just killed the guy, right? You look at, that's a black belt. That's a guy who's serious. That's a guy who trains with all those Martinez guys in Philly, right? Sean Brady and these serious people in the room. He choked him unconscious, man. Like Carlston Harris, he's a dangerous dude when he gets that choke series going. So for me, I think that if he is able to get one takedown in this fight, the fight could be over shortly thereafter. I do think he's got a unique style of grappling, really long arms, really big throws, looking to sink something in that is game over and the fight's over. So for me, I probably wouldn't play a money line side in this fight. I will only look into the prop market, see if I could get a huge number on Harris by sub, because I think that's his advantage in this fight. And to your point, Rich, the only reason I'd want to play it, Ponzinibbio's never been submitted before. So I would probably get a pretty good price on that kind of prop. I think people are thinking two older guys, maybe they go out there and bang it out on the feet. If that's the case, Carlston Harris probably going to have a sad night at the office, whether it's a decision, whether he gets clipped on the chin. I think both are possible. But the other thing I want to say, let's look at Carlston Harris and who he's been defeated by. He lost to Chaos Williams, a knockout threat, as far as I'm concerned, like a dangerous guy, especially in the early going. Chaos Williams is fast, powerful, and confident. Then you look at his other loss, Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's fighting for the title in 2025. That's going to be a fine loss. Even the Jarrah Hussein Al-Salawi, back in the day, he was well regarded. That was 2018. This guy has been in some pretty high-level fights outside the UFC, I believe, for Brave and a couple other organizations. So I don't think Carlston's a bum. I just think he's a wild man. So he's going to take risks. He's going to put himself in some bad situations. Somebody could get hurt and finished here. But if it comes down to the grappling, I like Carlson to get the job done.
Yeah, but let's also talk about the fights that he did win. You say the Jeremiah Wells fight, and yeah, he does have decent jiu-jitsu and whatnot. But it's like what they say about people with black belts and getting punched. They turn into white belts. And he didn't get punched in that fight, but his cardio did fail him. And we know Wells is a fucking flake. At any point, he can just fucking do something stupid. And I think that was the case in that fight. And prior to that, Jared Gooden is small for the weight class. He's a bit flaky too. He's fucking, his takedown defense isn't great.
He should have finished that fight. That was not good.
And then, Impa, I guess that has aged well, considering what Impa's done in PFL. Before that, Christian Aguilera. So I don't know, man. I don't rate him that well by his wins. And then you look on the Ponzinibbio side, without pulling it up, I know he's fought fucking, top 10 people for the majority of his career. So I'd give him the edge in that aspect.
Would it make you feel better if I told you that he beat Michel Demolidor Pereira and Wellington Turman on the regionals? No, I'm just fucking with you.
No.
No, those are probably his best wins, and they were back in like 2015. So there you go. Let's see how it shakes out. We got two old men doing battle at welterweight, and me and Rich are on slightly opposite sides because I got the jiu-jitsu guy and he's got the proven UFC commodity. But I'm not going to war over that one. That one's just a fun fight and an old guy matchup. I'm kind of surprised it's in the co-main event slot, but I guess that's just a gift to Ponzinibbio, right? He's on the commentary and all that shit. So they probably just wanted to do something nice by him. And I say we finish out here, Rich, with this main event of the evening. I'm an Amanda Ribas fan. I like her game. I think she's been underrated throughout her career. I've always said when she's at 115, great fighter. When she's at 125, I don't like it for her because a lot of what she does well is she's physical. She can grapple. She can throw girls. You go look at her credentials. She competes in the grappling with just about everybody that she fights, even up at 125, right? Where she's getting a takedown or she's getting a few takedowns. She's getting some control time. She's attempting submissions. She's a dangerous girl. And I think that when you look at the Mackenzie Dern side, her game is not translated as well as Amanda Ribas, right? The one X factor for me is Mackenzie Dern, powerful girl. Amanda Ribas, not the best durability you've ever seen. I think her durability, she's stuck between a rock and a hard place, Rich. If 120 was a weight class, Amanda Ribas is the champion. I'm half kidding. But you look at 125, the women are too big. They're too strong. They can cut too much weight. And then she can't really implement her game there. But then you look at 115, the durability is compromised. She's got to cut a lot of weight. She's muscular. Right? For a woman, she's muscular, she's physical, she's strong. That's why she has so much success when she grapples at 115. But when she strikes at 115, gets hit one time on the chin, she starts doing the Macarena and the salsa. So I think that this is a fight where we saw Mackenzie Dern almost knock out Angela Hill. Like she hurt her very badly in that fight on multiple occasions. I had the KO 25-1. I want to puke in my effing hands. She almost TKO'd her about 50 times too. But Mackenzie Dern, her finishing instincts are poor. They're not good. And then on top of that, aside from her finishing instincts, her grappling was not up to par against Amanda Ribas the last time they fought. You can make the excuse that she was coming off the pregnancy, but her grappling hasn't been up to snuff a few times in the UFC. With it's kind of shocking, but it's just the truth, right? A few times she's had great positions, got people to the ground, got to where she wanted to go. She's in her office, doesn't finish the fight, doesn't submit them. And if that's not going to happen, then I think that she needs to win this fight by knockout, or Amanda Ribas has a better game and a better process over time. And I think that will probably show out. So the one concern I have for Amanda is in a 5-round fight at 115, maybe that weight cut also compromises her cardio. But frankly, she was chasing down Luana Pinheiro in round 3 like she had been, hit with an EPO dose in the face between rounds. And then she spinning head kicked her and chased her to the ground and beat her ass. So I think that you look at Amanda Ribas, when she fought Dern, she let her know what time it was. She walked her down. She outboxed her on the feet. She jabbed her up. And when Mackenzie tried to crash the pocket and do something about it by grabbing a hold of her and, implementing her own grappling game, she got fucking thrown on her head multiple times. Amanda Ribas is a black belt in judo. She's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And she's one of the best and most proven jiu-jitsu girls in the division, period. Whether it's going out there and submitting people or whether it's going with Verna, going with Dern, not getting finished in those fights, going out there and willingly grappling with them. held down VV Arujau for like 8 minutes. Like, I think that Amanda Ribas is serious, and I just don't think Mackenzie Dern's game has ever translated. So I think I got to go with Amanda here once again. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I'm torn on this fight. I do like fight doesn't go the distance, which should be a good price for women's MMA because it's 5 rounds and because I think that, one clean connection by Dern. Yeah, she's not technical, but she does wing that right hand like a baseball bat. And if it connects on Ribas, she will rock her and maybe get a club and sub or a KO. So I like it for that side. And then on the other side, I like that the fact that Ribas was getting constant takedowns in the first fight. I just think give her 25 minutes to try and find a submission. Maybe Dern wilts in rounds 3, 4, and 5 and, gives it up. So I don't mind fight doesn't go the distance at a nice number, maybe either by submission for the same reasons. But yeah, Dern, man, she's so hit and miss. Like the fight with Angela Hill, she had her down multiple times. And, usually with Dern, it's like, here comes the sub within minutes, especially against someone like Hill, who's been subbed like 8 times in her fucking career, but it just never came. So that was surprising. But she had excellent cardio in that fight, man. I don't know whether she's taking supplements, some EPO or something, but, in that fight with Hill, Dern had unlimited cardio. She was tenacious. She'd get in her face, showed her no respect, mixed it up. It was a really good performance. And, the fight between them was a long time ago. She was coming off the pregnancy and whatever. So there are some unknowns. And yeah, Ribas, she's all right. And you mentioned the Pinheiro fight, but Pinheiro was gassed in round 3, man. So that was kind of a similar situation to what I was talking about with Puna and Baeza, where it was more a case of the ops being, checked out. So it made them look good. I think Dern's going to be there for the full 25 minutes. She's not a quitter, man. I've seen her be dropped before by people.
She got knocked down 4 times by Andrade. I posted yesterday. What's his name? Keith Peterson said she ain't dead yet. Go again.
Yeah, she's got that strong John Travolta chin, man, and it holds up. So yeah, she's been cracked before. She doesn't wilt. The fight against the fucking man, the Lemos was cracking her, fucking taking it to her, and she reversed positions. I even thought I had Dern in that one. I thought she was gonna be able to get a submission. But yeah, she reversed positions, man. She's willing to fight. She has got heart. So yeah, it's an interesting fight, man. I'm not bullish enough to pick a side. Like I said, I'd look at props. I like fight doesn't go the distance, man. But it's a good one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I do think Amanda, she's a violent girl. If Mackenzie wants to play around and just hang out on bottom and stuff like that, I do think she will try to make her pay. I do think her submission game is very, very high level, and I don't think people give her enough credit. Over 5 rounds, the one thing is the Rose fight. I thought there was some tactical errors from Amanda that really frustrated me there. I thought that was a winnable fight for her, honestly. Even the way we saw it play out. However, when I look at this, man, I just can't separate all the times that I've thought Dern could have, should have, and then didn't. And you look back, Yan Xiaonan armbarred herself against Carla Esparza. Go back and watch it. It's a fact. Then Mackenzie Dern, I was willing to go 4 units deep on Yan Xiaonan. I was like, I have now seen enough to say Mackenzie Dern is not submitting somebody, even if she gets to a great position. And then somebody else talked about it in the chat, but I don't know if you watched it, Rich. I'm a nerd. I watched her grappling match against Fionn Davies, right? She got, when I say destroyed, I'm saying like it was like a assault. Like it looked like one person had done jiu-jitsu their whole life and one person didn't. And it was like, maybe she's just regressed over time. I will say the other thing we got to point out, divorce Dern energy against Angela Hill was powerful. That is why we were so close to cashing the knockout. Maybe post-breakup Dern with Antonio Tricoli has a similar cap. We don't know that. So that's why fight doesn't go the distance. It's seeming like it might just be in the ether this time. But the other thing I'll note, you pointed it out. Mackenzie's not going to quit on herself from getting hit, getting hurt. She does have some pride in that, but she's just so easy to hit. Like I am worried that in this fight, like Amanda might take some lessons from the last one and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I try and spin kick her in the head. Like she did the same thing to Luana Pinheiro when she was walking her down. Dern starts off throwing and making some sense with her strikes and her combinations. over time, she gets wild, she gets loose, her hands start to come down, and she runs face first into punches. So I do think her defense is just like laughably bad. It's like insanely bad. And I think Amanda Ribas is just a much more process-oriented fighter. Hands up, walk forward, throw things that look like punching combinations. Like, it's not the perfect fighter, but I just think her process is better. So I think she's a deserved favorite. And that's the end of it. Guys, I'm excited to be back. I had a blast breaking down all these fights with you guys. I hope that you guys all enjoyed as well. Shout out to our guy Moises. Dern KO, her main training partner is Tatsuro Taira. If that's true, forget everything I said. Dern locked it in. It's already over. Tatsuro Taira to the top 5. We called that last year. We're back in the saddle. Rich, please tell the people where they can find you. Anything else that you got on your mind, the floor is yours, my man. I think we've had a hell of a show. It's good to be back. Cheers.
Yeah, find me on Twitter, man. There's a link in my bio if you want some bets. Join my Discord. We do all the other sports as well, soccer and the rest of it, or football as you call it. So yeah, hit me up, man. Find me on Twitter.
Hell yeah. If you're looking for Rich, guys, I will let you know all the links that you will need. Twitter, Patreon, anything else is in the description down below. Same is true of myself. If you're looking for me, you can find me everywhere at Liam Picks Fights. I'm talking about these fights on Twitter all week. You can get at me over there. Respectful disagreements, always welcome, both on social media as well as in the comment section down below. And if you guys have thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, go fire them off. I try and be very responsive and receptive to the comment section. I appreciate everybody for the support. It's good to be back. 2025, hitting the ground running. God bless you all. Good luck on all your bets. And come back later because we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody. Thanks.